Honestly, I feel ashamed of all the times someone mistreated me, and instead of getting away from them, I danced around trying to make them like me. It's embarrassing, and it also makes no sense. It's called fawning, and in fact, it's one of the 4 trauma responses that include fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And fawning is when you make yourself small and you act tough, or you try to influence the person, you act so nice because they're mistreating you, and through your sheer goodness or through being helpful, you know, the selfless helper, you try to almost heal the person who's behaving badly by just taking it from them, not showing them that it hurts you. Have you done that? It's a common pattern for a traumatized person. But the thing is, it usually progresses to a strong mental vagueness where you can't tell at all if it's you who's causing terrible interactions. So, you know, you maybe had trauma in your childhood, you learned to fawn, keep your parent happy, you grow up, and then now you're vague. You're like, I keep getting into these things where I feel like I'm sort of getting abused, but I can't tell if it's my fault. Is it just me? Am I too picky? Am I the difficult person? Or am I a doormat? Because either way, you don't feel good about yourself. And for that matter, the fawning energy doesn't make people like you. You know, it's a people-pleasing, but they're not pleased. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Vanessa, and she writes, Dear Anna, I've seen some of your YouTube videos about being attracted to the wrong people or trying to make crappy romantic relationships work. I've written off romance years ago for various reasons, but I still have problems with just casual everyday relationships. All right, got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle some things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's read through what the story she's telling us here about what's going on. I'm not even talking friendship, although I do have a hard time making friends. I'm talking about acquaintances I see on a regular basis. Even when someone is rude to me, instead of ignoring them or dropping them, I keep trying to make them like me, or telling myself their behavior isn't that bad and returning to them. This has been a lifelong pattern with me. This is so interesting to me. I hear you. All right, off the top of my head, Vanessa says, the most prevalent example I can give you is my hairdresser. Thanks to fights I've had with my mother over my hair, and still have, even though I'm 50 years old, doing anything with it is always a problem for me. What I'll do is I'll find a competent hairdresser who's incredibly rude to me. And instead of leaving that person and finding someone better, I'll keep going and trying to make the hairdresser like me. I had to fight with the last hairdresser just to get him to do what I wanted him to do. After my last appointment, I walked out of the salon after over-tipping him, which is customary. I so hear you. And mulling it over at home, I decided I'm not going back to this jerk. He talks over me, he interrupts me, contradicts me, and is very brusque overall. Here I've been trying so hard to get him to like and acknowledge me when I walk into the salon. I also go there for threading and waxing, she says, okay? And he's not all that friendly back. Now when I think back, I feel like an idiot for doing it. Then Vanessa says, I had a similar experience with a very rude and bigoted hairdresser many years ago. And I kept going back to her, even though our conversations were painful. And she was so incredibly rude and dismissive. And I went to her for 2 years. At least I got smart with this guy after a few months. And when I am treated badly or rejected, instead of walking away, I always stick around and sort of beg people to like me. And I hate that about myself, she says. I'd also like to mention that I recently spent a month baby and dog sitting for my brother when my sister-in-law was ready to give birth to their second child, and he was verbally abusive all the time I was there. There were times when I wondered if I deserved it. Friends I've confided to when I got back said they would have bought a plane ticket home after the first week, but I hung in there because I knew he needed me. I'm just mad at myself for taking it and not shutting him down. I could see he was under a lot of stress, but I shouldn't let myself be abused by someone who is stressed. But as angry as I am at him, I also feel sorry for him and frustrated with myself and my roller coaster emotions. How do I straighten myself out? She says, Anna Runkle, you, LOL, has my permission to read this letter. You know, when people write to me, I ask for permission. All right, Vanessa, thank you. I'm laughing so much. I just love your letter. I thought about it for a while, and because I just didn't know what to say. So first of all, I just believe you 100%. Usually we talk about crap fitting. That's when you fit yourself to unacceptable people and situations. And most commonly, people with CPTSD would do it in romance, but we do it in friendships and we do it with professional services too, because there's some mentality there that if everything just feels terrible and weird, it must be us, or we better take what we can get because that's all there's going to be. But there is this kind of strange, almost metaphysical aspect of what you're talking about. Fawning is actually a very negative energy. It's a negative interaction, and it doesn't feel good to be fawned. People don't end up liking you because you're people-pleasing them, you know. And so when somebody fawns, and you know, from time to time I've fawned, and from time to time people have fawned on me, and I really have very little tolerance for fawning. It is so uncomfortable for me because somebody's like dancing around, they're trying to make me happy, they're interrupting everything I say, they're literally not listening, they're just so like trying to anticipate what my need is going to be and what I'm going to say. It's so uncomfortable for me, and I end up frustrated and I end up shutting down and pulling away. So for the fawner, if you're sensing irritated energy, that's all I'm going to give you is that, is it partly you? There's one way that it's possibly partly you that we bring to it. But most of all, it's that we're in a fake idea that if we can just dance around and ignore, you know, be a martyr, be a really, really successful martyr, like a star level martyr where we can just take it. I can take it. This is a little story. When I was young, I applied for a secretarial job, and I put on my letter, I'm thick-skinned. And I think the previous job I had was very abusive. And I was trying to say, I can put up with anything, and I have no feelings about it. And I remember the person who interviewed with me said, that's not a good thing. Don't say that. And I was like, what? I get it now. You don't want to be too thick-skinned. Obviously, we don't want to be oversensitive. And this is what it's like to have complex PTSD, is you're confused all the time, like, am I being oversensitive? This is bothering me. But we end up with these really weird, uncomfortable, hurtful situations with people, and we don't know how we got there. And so the answer is going to be little steps. It's going to be little steps where your part in it is to start getting really honest from moment to moment about what you're feeling, what just happened, and connecting with other people who are on the healing journey just like you, so that you can get a reality check. Like, tell them, what did the hairdresser say? Was it me? Was I too prickly? Like, it does take a lot of self-honesty to just admit, were you fawning? Did you have a chip on your shoulder? Is there something that you're doing? But I tell you, with CPTSD, we sometimes just find ourselves magically drawn to these recreations of the drama that we once had, where we don't get to have boundaries. This thing where your mother criticized your hair and you never got to feel good about it. So when we get triggered, even when it's like an old emotional flashback or an unconscious memory about something, I'll speak for myself. I have prickly energy. I come off as sort of like defensive and difficult. For the person who's in the position of cutting the hair or styling the hair of such a person, it can be fraught. It can be stressful. They can feel defensive. So you may be bringing out a negativity just because you're having an emotional flashback about it. So there are also terrible people out there. They're very unkind. They're bigoted. They're just rude. But I would just say, if you're seeing two hairdressers who are both rude, it sort of smells like a situation where your old trigger is coming up and maybe playing a role in this, either shutting you down to be a martyr or making you have fawning energy that's uncomfortable. And fawning energy almost has to be met by irritable, impatient energy. Please, 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 come on, stop, right? We sort of invite that sort of snippy response to it. So perhaps I'm fishing, perhaps I'm overreaching. Forgive me if I'm way off base, but I will say that's true in my case. When I have fawned and when people have fawned on me, it does make me very irritated with them. I don't tend to stay friends with people who fawn. It's too uncomfortable for me. So I think it's Vanessa, it's your healing. Your healing is just going to get you there without whether you cognitively figure out why this is happening or not. And so much of our CPTSD healing is like that. We never get perfect answers. Why do I do this? Why is this hard for me? I, by the way, had haircut stuff too. I used to always not just get dysregulated, but pretty much dissociate in the chair getting my hair done. I don't even know why exactly. I remember when I was 13 once, somebody really messed up my hair. It was burned with a perm, and then I had like a bowl cut in the front, and it was a very crazy bowl cut mullet with a bad perm, and it took over a year to it could have been that, but it feels deeper than that. A fear, like a sense of distrust, and a fear that I can't speak up and say what I want. So when I read your letter, I just resonated so strongly I had to think about it for a while to go, yeah, what is that? So I hope this has been helpful. Whatever, sometimes we never know the answer about why we are the way we are, but the solution is the same anyway. We learn to calm our triggers. We learn to express our true and real selves, to be able to like set boundaries and say, hey, don't do that. This is what I want. To be able to, like the uncomfortable conversation about how much is it going to cost? And, could maybe somebody else in the salon do this one because what happened last time with you didn't go so well? All that stuff is so uncomfortable. People who have had trauma think that they can't have the conversation. And so these emotions get pent up, and then they make everything, even more intense than it otherwise would be. And then our behaviors might not make any sense. So healing, becoming real. I'll say this about every kind of CPTSD problem. You need good tools to get real and name what the feelings are that are coming up. Just name them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to like turn them into anything better. You just name them. I have fear that this, that I'm going to get ripped off. I'm resentful at this hair cutter because I have fear they're bigoted, and fear they're insulting me, and fear they don't respect me, and fear I'm an idiot to spend my money here. I'm just sort of like putting into the language of my daily practice some stuff you said. I encourage you, do the daily practice. It's a technique I teach free in a course. I'll link it at the very end of this course, and it's also on my website. It's in the description section. And if you sign up for my daily practice, you not only learn the writing and meditation techniques, but you get invited to free calls with me on Zoom every 2 weeks. And it just goes on and on and on. You never have to buy anything. You can just come to this. I do have things that you can buy, but it is my mission to share with everyone who would benefit from it this daily practice that just saved me from myself and has freed me to start to have a life and to be real and to flourish. Even when you knew that people were mistreating you, have you ever responded with an attempt to completely change yourself into the person that you thought that they wanted? Like, that is a childhood PTSD thing. Completely abandoning yourself to desperately please an abusive person is one of the most destructive adult symptoms of early trauma. Because when someone is abusing you now, the last thing you need is to abandon yourself, to basically deny your perception and give away all your power. So what makes us do that? And what does it look like? Today I'm answering a letter from a woman I'll call Layla. And here's what she wrote. Hi, Anna. I'm going through a divorce after 10 difficult months of marriage with my ex-husband. I saw red flags going into the marriage, but I rushed and we got married in only 3 months because I was afraid to lose the opportunity to marry him. I was worried he would change his mind. I believe I have CPTSD after growing up in a household with a highly critical mother and where affection was only granted if you did exactly what you were told to do. Doing anything different meant love was withdrawn. My husband, or now ex-husband, was never appreciative of the effort I put into our marriage. The things that hurt me didn't matter. My opinions didn't matter, and everything I did was wrong and got criticized. He constantly said that he could do better than being with me, that he deserves someone better since he's handsome and young. I didn't take this as a sign to leave. I took it as a sign to do more. Okay, I'm circling stuff because I'm going to come back and go through this letter after we go through it one time and talk about what you're saying here, Layla. After 10 months of marriage and 6 months of separation where I tried to reconcile with him, I committed to being more obedient, more respectful, more understanding, and kinder to his family, but he still wasn't satisfied. I felt abandoned and unwanted and worthless to him. So I wrote to Layla an email and just said, could you clarify about this obedient thing? That's kind of unusual. And she said, I practice Islam. I don't wear a hijab, but I do the 5 daily prayers. Islam helps me find peace, but it is very often used by some to manipulate others. I love my faith, and I would like to keep learning and practicing in a tolerant way that never makes others feel excluded. My Islamic values come from my parents. I learned Islam from them as a young child, but they didn't force me to practice. I decided to learn more about the faith on my own in university. I was born and raised in Canada. My ex grew up in the Middle East until he was 25. His family were quite judgmental and harsh with me for not practicing Islam the way they did. In their culture, women are expected to be obedient and quiet. They were highly critical of me and even told me I don't belong in the Arabic community since I was not born in the Middle East. I felt guilt and shame. After this difficult marriage, I still noticed myself wishing I had done something differently and said things differently, and then maybe it would have worked out. There were so many situations that I interpreted as abandonment. My ex-husband told me to pack a bag and leave the house, and when I left, I went to my parents' house, who then kicked me also out of the house, because my mother was very angry that I wanted to work on my marriage and resolve things with him. When I left my parents' house, I went to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks until they told me it was okay to come back. I went back, and again my mother kept threatening me and emotionally abusing me until it became physically abusive. When she hit me, I didn't care about my head, and I didn't care that she hit me. I felt like I deserved all the pain that everyone was putting me through. I felt numb. I left their house willingly and paid my brother to stay with him. The divorce is finalized, and my mother and I don't keep in such close contact. I'm worried that I just stepped away from all the abuse, but if I were to encounter another abusive situation, I would very deeply believe I deserved it too. Can you please help me figure out how to heal from abandonment wounds and how to stop ruminating and judging myself for the mistakes I made that caused me to get kicked out of my ex-husband's house and by my parents? Thank you for your insight. Okay, Layla, I am so sorry. This is a horrible situation. And the thing is, I think as much as you're in pain, I think you might not quite realize just how badly people have treated you. I'm not sure. So I'm going to go back through the letter and let's see what we see here. All right. Going through a divorce after 10 difficult months of marriage. And the first thing you told me about this was that you rushed in and got married in only 3 months because you were afraid to lose the opportunity to marry him, and you were worried he would change his mind. So you told me this up front, and I'm glad you did. And what's interesting to me is that this didn't come up again. But I know you know what happened here, like what your part in this is. You just tipped your hand. You rushed in after 3 months because you were afraid he was going to leave. And I know about trauma thinking. When you told me down in the letter about your parents, I could see a real pattern that had started when you were young and was showing up now. All right. But this fear that you had to hurry up and marry him as if that would work to make him love you and stay with you before he changed his mind. There's so much sadness in that. Then you say, I believe I have CPTSD after growing up in a household with a highly critical mother and where affection was only granted if you did exactly what you were told to do. So I can sure see how you got conditioned to do exactly what other people tell you to do. And there's a time and a place for this, but if it became like the whole way that you do life, and that's the only way you've ever made anything go your way, that would explain what happened in this marriage where you thought you could save the day by doing exactly what he told you to do. So then you said that your ex-husband never appreciated the effort you put into the marriage. You know, Layla, I have a feeling this had nothing to do with the effort you put into the marriage. It sounds like let's just see what he says here. Things that hurt you didn't matter. Your opinions didn't matter. Everything you did was wrong and got criticized. So what you're describing there is serious self-centeredness. I can't diagnose somebody with narcissism, but if a spouse doesn't matter and everything they do is wrong and gets criticized, but they married you in 3 months, it sure points to me like somebody maybe kind of love bombed and then got disinterested and discarded. That is what this looks like. Now, he didn't write to me. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's emotionally abusive. He constantly said that he could do better than being with me. So you married a guy who just kept telling you during a 10-month marriage that he could do better than you because he's young and handsome. All right, clues are pouring in now what this guy is about. He can do better than you. So it's a little puzzling to me if he thought that this was not a good match for him. It's hard for me to understand why he married you. But I don't have insight into that, so just as well, because I'm going to stay focused on you. Here's what happened with you when he said these horrible things that were kind of deal breaker things to say. I didn't take this as a sign to leave. I took it as a sign to do more. All right, I know that pattern so well. When somebody mistreats you, instead of leaving, you think, I can fix this. I can do more. I can, rig the situation with my behavior and change myself and abandon myself and pretend I'm the person I imagine they want me to be, and then they'll love me. And I mean, everybody, has that ever worked? It doesn't work. You can probably delay somebody leaving a little bit, or maybe keep them from directly abusing you in the moment. But in the long run, if a marriage isn't based on people loving each other and wanting to be there, you got problems. So that was there from the beginning. And we're going to talk about why did you want to be there in a minute. So then you said, after 10 months of marriage and 6 months of separation, where I tried to reconcile with him, I committed to being more obedient, more respectful, more understanding, and kinder. All right, so I'm just imagining when you two were fighting and he was saying he wasn't happy with you. He was saying, you're not obedient, you're not respectful, you're not understanding, you're not kind to his family. I don't know you, but those could be adjectives that you would say when you were trying to control somebody and they were resistant to being controlled. And you say he wasn't satisfied, even though you tried to do these things. You felt abandoned, unwanted, and worthless to him. Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. So then when I asked you about that in the letter, like, why were you trying to be more obedient? Then you explained that you practice Islam and you were trying to match his brand of Islam, which is very traditional. But you know what? It's not traditional to marry somebody and then just tell them how awful they are and how you could do better. That's not traditional at all. I'm sure it's not Islam. And it sounds like you have you don't wear a hijab, you do the prayer, so you have a strong faith in spirituality. You've found groundedness in this. And, you're saying you learned it from your parents, and your parents were people who also devalued you and didn't give you any love unless you did exactly what they wanted. So if by contrast to his family, your family is so nice, that says so much about his family. Because what you said about your family, the criticism, and then later the physical abuse, it doesn't quite mesh with what you're telling me about their brand of faith, and that their faith was inclusive and tolerant. They weren't tolerant of you, and they threw you out of the house. They weren't inclusive of you. It's a very painful letter. And I want to be gentle because it seems a little bit like it's so bad that you haven't quite faced it, that this has been happening. So you say, my Islamic values come from my parents, learned them as a young child. You weren't forced to practice, so you got to choose it, which is great. I decided to learn more about my faith in university. Okay. And your ex grew up in the Middle East until he was 25, so totally different culture, right? So they were quite judgmental and harsh with you for not practicing Islam as they did. In their culture, women are expected to be obedient and quiet. And I really don't judge that you would want to go into a traditional religion and you'd be drawn to that orderly way of life that's reverent towards things and has meaning built in. I don't judge that. What I judge is that they totally denigrated you, that they didn't respect the marriage that had happened. And Layla, I can't help but wonder if there's a piece of the story either that you couldn't tell me or that you don't see yet about, what was the big conflict for them? Did they not give their blessings to the wedding in the first place? What was it that drove your husband to marry you when he had these horrible attitudes towards you? So the impression I get from the outside is just that you went in good faith and they just totally turned against you and just shoved you out of the family, and a divorce came down and it's not what you wanted, which is interesting. We're going to get to that. So, but you got into something where women are expected to be obedient and quiet. And when the guy starts emotionally abusing you, you try to be more obedient and more quiet. And I'm trying to look for the analogy of what that sounds like, where somebody annihilates their own personality and their own autonomy to try to get an abusive person to like them. Maybe trauma bonding, maybe Stockholm syndrome, right? Then you say, after this difficult marriage, I still notice myself wishing I had done something differently and said things differently and that it would have worked out. So here's where you have a notion that you possibly had control over the situation if you just could have turned into a different person and been different, said different things, and then it would have worked out, that he would have loved you if you were not you. And I'm just going to phrase it that way because that is such CPTSD thinking. They would love me if I could not be me. And I've noticed this in some people who, like where parents said, I wish you were never born. They get so good at trying to, chameleon themselves and change into something they think the parent will accept that they literally can't remember who they are. And Layla, I think that might have started to happen with you. And it's very important that we just stop that process right now. So let's go through the letter. There were so many situations that I interpreted as abandonment. I don't think you interpreted. I think this is a case where you literally were abandoned. Your ex-husband told you to pack a bag and leave the house. And I don't know what prompted that, but yes, you were kicked out of the house. And when you left to stay at your parents' house, they also kicked you out for a different reason, and it was because you wanted to work on the marriage and resolve things with him. So I take it your parents thought he was a real ass, and they really, really didn't want you with him. And what I'm seeing in your letter here is there's a little bit of maybe cognitive dissonance where your parents are doing and saying things, and the family is saying things that says something really bad has happened, but your mind keeps thinking, no, if I would just change myself, I think I could fix this. And I know how trauma makes a person think that. I know it's not crazy. I know it's not your fault. I know it comes from that injury that happened to you through the way you were treated when you were a kid. But I think to outside people, perhaps it looks so irrational that it's frightening. And that perhaps and I'm guessing that the conflict between you and your ex-husband was pretty messy and leaked over and created a lot of drama throughout the family. And they had some sort of vested interest in you not going back to that. Because I can't imagine parents being that intense about you not going back to somebody unless the abuse was even more serious than you're telling me. I think that's possible, that you're not able to express it or see it yet. Then you said when you left your parents' house, you went to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks until they let you come back. So you wanted to go back home. You wanted to return. They wouldn't let you because of what you wanted. And you went back, and again, your mother kept threatening you and emotionally abusing you until it became physically abusive. Now this is, wow, that's really bad. I know what it is to have a loved one in an abusive relationship and to feel desperate to help them get out of it. It is very hard. When a person is being abused, sometimes they can be so irrationally drawn back into the abuse that even when the whole family helps to coordinate, an exit or a break or something that can calm the relationship down and give a little air for people to think, that even then an abused person, for somebody who doesn't get it, who hasn't themselves been abused, they look like they are indifferent, disrespectful, just being crazy, just like, no, I'm going to go back. I don't care that you did all this for me. So I'm only trying to guess, why would your mother be so angry with you? This is to the point that she physically abused you. I'm not going to blame you for it. Something's wrong with anybody who does that. But I'm just wondering, what were her motives? And then you say, when she hit you, you didn't care about your head and you didn't care that she hit you. You felt like you deserved all the pain that everybody was putting you through. You felt numb. Okay, there it is. There's the clue that somehow little Layla let in this idea of not being good, and that somebody being endlessly critical, never accepting, never praising, never giving approval unless you did exactly as you were told. There was no room for your personality. Maybe you didn't get to develop it. I've noticed, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a researcher, but I've just noticed that a lot of times when people have been traumatized, and in myself, it's as if our development, our maturation gets slowed down. I don't think it's as magical as getting stuck at a certain age in our lives, but it gets slowed down, and there's this incredible toughness and kind of old soul maturity to us, and at the same time an emotional immaturity that just says, I'll change myself. I want to go back into the abusive situation with the man, with my mom. I'll go back in, I'll change myself. Why is this happening? And why it's happening is because you think you deserve it, and because you're numb, you can't feel it, which, by the way, is a symptom you didn't cause, but I want to help you heal that, help you get unnumb, and it's painful, not facing what's really happening. But if you weren't numb, you'd be seeing this is nothing for you to be in, and that's a tough situation. Going out on your own and having no shelter with family, you had to pay your brother to stay with him for a while. Maybe what you mean is you shared the rent or something. I don't know, but the way you phrased it is that you paid your brother to stay with him. I just get the picture of a young woman alone, adrift, unsupported, trying to make sense of everything, and having a traumatized mind that sees only one option: to somehow change into who you imagine they demand that you be, that you become exactly who they're telling you to be. But you know what, Layla? I don't hear anybody telling you to be anything right now. I think whatever they think about you doesn't matter at this point. This is a crisis for you to begin to take steps towards the life that you want. Now, you said the divorce is finalized and you and your mother don't keep such close contact. Well, in a way, good. Perhaps you and your mother can be healed later. Something can be worked out then. I'm really glad this ex is out of your life. I hope you can allow that to be for good. Don't make contact. Let it go. And you are worried that you just stepped away from all the abuse. But if you were to encounter another abusive situation, you would very deeply believe you deserved it too. So there you go. There's your wise self knowing what your next step is. You need to work with that piece of you that feels like you deserve abuse. There's something in you that is carrying a lot of shame and guilt and self-attack, so that when people do this to you, there's something about it that makes sense, and there's something about it that paralyzes you and doesn't give you when you're healed, Layla, and somebody does this, treats you this way, you're going to go, don't you dare treat me this way. You will fight back because it's rational and it's right. You will fight back. So that fight in you has been suppressed by your belief that you're only going to get loved. So you said, can I help you figure out how to heal from abandonment wounds? And that is exactly what's going on here. You have abandonment wounds. And that's why it's so hard not to try to cling to the relationship that is just blah. And how to stop ruminating and judging yourself for the mistakes you made that caused you to get kicked out of your ex-husband's house. I didn't hear any mistakes. I don't know, maybe there were some mistakes, but from what you told me, it was not, you got kicked out for reasons that didn't have to do with you. Did he impulsively marry you against his parents' wishes? Did they threaten him or something I don't know. Something was happening there that does not appear to have anything to do with you. And you can, get into the comments and correct me if I'm wrong. Really, did you do something to bring that on? Those are not your mistakes. What's funny is when people's self-esteem is really hurt, this is not funny, but what's odd is that when self-esteem is super low, a person can think that she can cause everything to get better, or that it was her fault it got so bad. And in a weird way, that's very grandiose, right? That you made everybody reject you. And I'm just telling you, like in ordinary families, everybody kind of has a vested interest in doing their best with the spouses of the young people in the family. And in such a short time, and with the stuff that he was saying, I don't know, something is very, very wrong with this picture. I hope you fought back. I hope the things that you think are mistakes are when you said, hey, screw you people. You don't get to treat me this way. I was not created to be this for you, like a punching bag, to put down and to exclude. Now, Layla, let's talk about what you can do to start changing your life. I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and let all contact stop with your husband. That sounds healthy and rational. I'm going to encourage you to hold on pause your relationship with your mom because of the physical abuse. It sounds like she may have some best interest at heart for you, but right now that relationship sounds really harsh. It's time for you to have some independence. It's time for you to start to finally have the space to be who you are, not defined by the parents criticizing you or the husband criticizing you and trying to please them. So I know you have a couple things. You've been to university, you have a faith that you love, and I assume those are two communities where you have friends, you have somewhere to go. I would also recommend, if you are not already in therapy, I think having a therapist would be a very important thing right now. What you've been through is so traumatic that being with somebody who's trustworthy and knowledgeable and who is there for you, like for weekly appointments, to help you make sense of what happened and to really hold a space for you to figure out, like, who are you? What do you actually want in your life? What does this look like? What does it mean, the way you want to keep getting drawn like a moth to the flame into very bad situations where you get hurt and you get destroyed? And then to start taking steps to make that better. Whether it's through your faith or 12-step groups or counseling or some existing friends you have from your past, I really encourage you to have a group of women friends who you can spend time with, people who get together sometimes and laugh and talk to each other about what's really going on and who support each other and who you can call and text at 10 o'clock at night when something bad has happened and you have so much pain coming up. I think when you've been in a terrible relationship of any kind, and this sounds like a trauma bonding type thing, there's always going to be a period of withdrawal. And you can think of it like a drug addiction. It's not really the same thing, but it has a lot of the same characteristics. Is a lot of the function of the drama of an abusive relationship is that it keeps you away from deep, sad feelings that come up. And it happens to everybody. Like, sadness is in everybody, but having been through what you have been through, just accept it's okay. You're going to have sadness. There's nothing wrong with being sad. It can be too much to deal with sometimes, but that's why I'm suggesting you support yourself with people, like pad your life with good people who care about you and have your best interest and who are willing to listen to you and support you. And you still have plenty of time to have your life unfold in a positive way that fits who you really are. And on your way from where you are right now to things getting better, you're going to have all these experiences of friendships and happy things and hard things and sad things and times when you're scared and times when you don't know you're going to make it, times when you feel depressed. And it's all okay. It's all part of it. Because what you're free to do right now is let your life unfold and become populated with the people who fit you and the activities that fit you. And you're only beginning to find out what that's going to feel like. But I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like it. So just build it into the plan. There are going to be sad times. There's going to be times when you feel like, oh, you've just got to contact that ex-husband. That's the trauma talking. I really can honestly not see any scenario where contacting him would lead to anything good or constructive for you emotionally. But that's when you have a therapist, your therapist is going to help you with that. I have some friends and we help each other eat healthy. And we have a shared concept together called bunny slippers. And bunny slippers, I don't even own a pair of bunny slippers, but we tell each other, hey, bunny slippers. And that means put on your comfy slippers and treat yourself very gently today. When you're having a hard time, when you feel like you can't get through something, bunny slippers, all right? I would love for you to come take my free course, The Daily Practice. It's always linked down below in the description section. And I teach these techniques where you can take these harsh feelings that come up and you can just take them out onto paper using this very specific technique. These are the techniques that help me come out of my deep trauma back in the day. And I offer them free to anybody in the world who wants to try them. And we have free calls every 2 weeks where we use the techniques together. I take questions. I'd love to meet you there. It's always a pleasure when I've answered somebody's letter on a YouTube video and then they show up in a call and I'm like, is that you? Hi. I just want to do a virtual hug. You can do that. We're a place you can come. And so for people who have professional help and friends and people who don't have those things, having tools and techniques that you can use anytime to help calm those intense emotions is such a good thing to have. And all you need to do it is some paper and a pen, and I keep them in my purse all the time. That's one of the ways that I take care of myself, and you can too, where you just know you're in a bunny slipper phase of life, always have pen and paper on you so that you can use these techniques to just, let it out a little bit, let it out a little bit. And then that gives you some freedom to kind of handle, when you're out at a dinner party or shopping somewhere and the feelings are coming up and you're panicking and you're getting triggered. You have a way always at your fingertips to bring that back down and to be able to carry on and finish the shopping or say goodnight gracefully to your hosts or whatever you're doing. You have freedom now. It's a little bit like having a tank of oxygen for a scuba diver. You can go into this world that's not always easy for you, and you can breathe, and you can come back out. You'll be able to get free from it. One of the curses of living with the effects of abuse and neglect in your childhood is that when people treat you badly, it can put you in a fog of confusion where you don't know, did you cause them to treat you badly and you should just be quiet? Or are they being totally unfair and you should let them have it? And if you tend to get dysregulated, which is pretty normal for people with childhood PTSD, you've probably had the experience of just kind of flipping out on people when they cross that line with you. They treat you bad and just boom, your rage comes out. And the confusion will then be there again, later with remorse. Should I have not freaked out on them? Now am I the bad guy? Or should I have fought harder? When you feel like somehow you handled everything wrong, how do you know what the right way to handle it is? My letter today, I really felt for this woman. I'll call her Chelsea, and she writes, I'm writing to you to ask your opinion on something, Anna. In the time in which I was very slowly waking up and then healing and recovering from CPTSD, although mostly before I saw what was going on, I behaved badly in a few situations. Here in the South, we would say, I showed my ass. The situations in question were times where someone else was acting really unfair or cruel or nasty to me, and instead of walking away, I just kind of let loose all my emotions back onto them. I've been there. All right, I'm going to circle some things. I'll read all the way through so we can kind of hear the whole story, and then we'll go back and I'll talk about some of the things I circled and see if I can help you, Chelsea. Okay. One example, she says, is when I joined a neighborhood group online. Neighborhood groups online. I know how this goes. When I got there, I saw a long discussion thread of a few of my neighbors talking badly about me. Neighbors. Okay. And it was based on some assumptions that weren't true. A friend of mine had let his dogs out off the leash when I wasn't home, which I had told him specifically not to do, and the dog chased the neighbor's cat and was generally a menace. I had animal control called to my house to investigate my own dog, lots of calls, and legal liability because it was my house. I ended my friendship with that person and told them they could not come over or bring their dogs anymore. The basic online version of the story was that I knew all about it, condoned it, and didn't care what happened to my neighbors. So they were raking me over the coals. Oh yeah, okay. Rather than just unsubscribing from the group, closing my computer and walking away, I called the neighbors out in the comment thread. Of course, this never ever helps the situation. And in my rant, I mentioned that one of these neighbors months before had been really rude and snubbed me when I waved hello to her at a grocery store. This is heating up. It's heating up here. And it cleared up the mystery as well as to why various people in the neighborhood wouldn't smile or wave or say hello back to me when I saw them while out for a walk. So after I made the post, she saw me in the store and she made a big sarcastic show of saying, hello. What I saw in the group was hurtful and unfair, but my retaliation was harsh and unnecessary. There you go. I don't remember the exact contents of what I said, but it's very possible or likely that I made assumptions that exaggerated their intentions to hurt me, similar to what they had done to me. Ooh, you have insight, girl. Okay. They were probably just rightfully angry about the dogs being loose and endangering other pets, which makes sense. Pulling me apart on a public forum probably wasn't the best thing they could have done, but then that's where I blew up at them as well. All right. Of course, since then, my neighbors won't talk to me or look at me. Not that they really did before. either. The dog incident was what they were complaining about online, but they had been snubbing me before that for reasons I don't fully understand. They were friendly with my ex-husband who smeared me after I left our abusive marriage, so that could have something to do with it. I'm torn about whether I should make any kind of apology. I often feel like I should just try to let it go and keep doing the daily practice. That's the techniques I teach. Yay for you doing that. And you say doing it because the feeling of having to do something does lessen as you continue with the practice, which makes you think that it might be part of some of the compulsive nature of CPTSD flashbacks. Oh, the yelling? Yeah, right. Okay. And I chalk it up to the lessons learned and whether I should make one simple and direct apology, as I do feel I shouldn't have posted what I posted. But then again, neither should they. I get very mixed up in general when I have wronged someone who also wronged me, who I think may be an unsafe person. When before my recovery, I wouldn't have defended myself against this kind of treatment, but would have just cried and fawned and begged them to explain why I was bad and forgive me. I'm not sure how good a judge I am of exactly how the fault lay in these types of situations, since I was super triggered when the events happened. For example, was the discussion about me in the online group really as negative as I remember? I don't even know. It doesn't feel right to just do nothing. If someone had acted crazy at me, I would appreciate an acknowledgement and an apology, as long as it was simple and not in my face, demanding a response or anything. Then again, I've never gone after a neighbor and torn them apart in front of many others while they weren't there to defend themselves. What do you think about making amends to people who treated us badly as well? Does it make me just as bad as them if I don't acknowledge or apologize? Is it keeping myself safe to not approach them, or is it cowardly? If I apologize and they just take it as another springboard to torch me with more accusations and insults, then does that make me foolish for trying? Every time I think I've made up my mind, a week goes by and then I'm right back at the beginning of the question again. Would love to hear your thoughts, Chelsea. Okay. I can help you with this. I actually have specific experience with horrible neighbors making up stuff. And it's been shocking. And I went through the cycles you did of like, can I fawn? Can I bargain with them? Can I try to understand where their pain is coming from? But it turned out they were just being nasty. And it was mostly, I hate to say it, but women, like mean girls, who get together and do that. And I guess there's been a few instances in my life where that's happened. And when I look back at it and think about, in retrospect, how I could have handled it, that's how I'm going to tell you to do it. And I'm going to say, yes, you can apologize. It's an option for you. And I'll tell you why and I'll tell you how. But let's go through this letter. This is so juicy, Chelsea. It's just, it's such a drama, right? So I love that phrase, I showed my ass. Yeah. So you blew up at people for mistreating you. I don't blame you. People talking smack about you online is pretty bad behavior. So this thing happened with the dog. It wasn't actually your fault. They blamed you. You didn't have a chance to explain yourself. You don't know why people are not talking to you. I think this thing that you split up in an abusive relationship and your husband smeared you and women can't handle it, I think it's significant. And I can only speculate, but I will tell you that when I became divorced, my relationships with the women who I had normally hung around with, and specifically in my neighborhood, became strained. And I don't know what that's about. I don't know what it's about. I sometimes wondered, it's like, what, do you think I'm a threat? Or does it scare them to see somebody else going through what they fear most of being on their own and not being able to manage? I don't know, but it happened to me. And it hurt so bad because, like, when you go through a divorce, you kind of need more social support, not less. So there was this shaming, and I'll just tell you, like, it reached a crescendo where there was this gossip that went around where people, I had inquired about adopting a cat long after I left that neighborhood, and they were like mutual friends, and somebody from the neighborhood told them that I killed cats, that I had killed 4 cats, in fact, and you shouldn't let me have a kitten. And it's just totally not true. And I think it just has to do with this weird attitude of judgment and negativity. I had a little kitten up there. I still have her. She's actually sleeping at my feet right now. She's 11 years old. I had a kitten in that neighborhood, and somebody just got really codependent, and they're like, I think you're not taking care of that cat. And I was totally taking care of the cat. I had had a cat for 15 years before that died of a natural causes cat disease. And so I don't know where they got this idea. It was just like a game of telephone gossip that just went viral. And soon all these people were giving me weird and dirty looks. And it wasn't true. And it wasn't worth defending myself. It's like, can you imagine if I just was going to call everybody up and go, excuse me, I just want to tell you, I had a cat. It died of old age. And then I got a kitten. And I still have that kitten. And I didn't kill any cats. It's just like, it just would be so dumb to even try to fight it. Honestly, what I did, I eventually moved out of that neighborhood, and with gusto. I was so glad to be out of there, and my life got totally better simply by moving away. There was something toxic in that whole scene. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of gossipy stuff. I don't know. It just wasn't good. So when you talk about this neighborhood, I can't help but go, oh gosh, it sounds like my old neighborhood. And it sounds like some sort of Real Housewives show or something where these people have nothing better to do than get online and gossip like everybody knows. Can I just tell you, don't gossip about people. Don't try to slander anybody's reputation, ever. Just don't do it. And you know that. So all of this is just to say, I totally understand the pain, the confusion. How do you fight something like this without just making everything worse? I'll tell you how to do it. I know what to do, and you can follow my advice if you want. You didn't walk away, you yelled at them, you got into a rant online. I don't know, Chelsea, sometimes I think people have it coming, but yes, it ends up kind of harming you. And it's, what the biggest thing is, you don't have peace about it right now. You don't have peace about it right now. But I'll tell you a little secret belief that I have is that for those of us who have been suppressed, not listened to, not supported emotionally as kids, sometimes when we're upset and we need to express ourselves now, it is better to express ourselves badly than not to express ourselves at all. So I'm sort of behind you on this. I think you can clean up anything that you don't like about how you handled it, but good for you for speaking up. For your spirit with your CPTSD to just go, you know what? You don't get to treat me this way. Good. Every cell of your body hears it when you do that. All right? So good, you did it. All right, but it's messy. Now you're embarrassed and you're not having peace. So let's undo the part that needs to be undone. Not the part that you spoke up. You stood up for yourself. Oh, people who ostracize, that is such a cruel punishment. It's a terrible thing to do to people. And you think what is this, high school? But it is. It's like, yeah, it is. It is like high school. And people who are immature do it to other people. Who knows? I don't know. They get some sort of feeling of being good people out of it, or something they don't want to look at. I don't know. We can only speculate, and it's a waste of time to speculate. We just got to get peace inside. All right. So I love your insight. You have very good insight where you say, it's very possible I made assumptions that exaggerated their intentions to harm you. That is what we do. So that's brilliant. Let's assume that you did, all right, as we consider a possibility. Let's just consider. So they also, it's yes, you maybe did that. They did it. They thought that you had intentions to harm them when they assumed you didn't care about this dog thing, which you did. You responded to it in the best way you could, and you did care. So they're probably just rightfully angry about the dogs being loose and endangering other pets, which makes sense. But pulling you apart on a public forum probably wasn't the best thing. That's putting it nicely. It's BS. That's terrible doing that. People should talk directly when they have a beef with somebody. Absolutely. This thing where people use the internet for it is just, it's made life terrible for everybody. All right. So that's when you blew up with them. So, of course, you say, then my neighbors wouldn't talk to me or look at me. Not that they really did before either. The dog incident was what they were complaining about, but they'd been doing this for a long time, and you don't even know why. I'm sorry. That's terrible. That is cruel human treatment. Okay. They were friendly with your ex who smeared you after you left your abusive marriage. Yeah, says a lot about the people. I don't know. So that could have had something to do with it. But I think sometimes something really bad happening, if they're aware that you're abused, people who are not emotionally mature, they're just like, oh, I can't deal with that possibility. Maybe they have something like that in their life, or they're afraid of it. Or again, I think that people carry fear, and they see somebody standing up for themselves or getting free. And it's almost like they stand in front of you, they feel scared, and because they're not very grown up inside, they think you're the one making them feel afraid. They conflate you with the threat that they dread that your experience represents, because it can happen to anybody and it will happen to some of them, right? And they know it. They know it on some level. I often feel like I should just try to let go, do the daily practice, yes. Chalk it up to lessons learned. Well, I think if you could let it go, you would have by now. And that's one reason why a good apology is so powerful, because it lets you let it go. Like you just kind of, when you know that even though they were worse, you did something wrong, the fact that you did something wrong is what's haunting you. It's less so. The fact that they did something wrong is easy to forget. You will forget it. But this part where you feel like you didn't live up to your own standards, that's what's grinding you down. Okay. So you posted it. And you get mixed up in general when someone has wronged you and then you wrong them back. And, are you bad? Or are you just as bad as them? And it's confusing. Yes, it is. It is. And then the fear that if you apologize, that you're either condoning or you're accepting guilt, that it's all your fault, or that you're condoning their treatment of you. So here's what I want to say. Apologizing does not have to be that at all. You don't have to go there. So here's how you make a clean apology to them if you decide to. You cannot, it's up to you, but you might as well give it a try. It's good practice. You have to detach from things turning out a certain way as a result of your apology. So first you detach from that and you go, I'm just going to own what I did. I'm going to say it directly to these people. And so I don't know how you would do that. You're talking about a group of people. You don't want to put it online. If it's a direct conversation with them, or you see them standing together, or you go talk to a couple of them and then a couple more when you see them. And so you prepare this. You do a little preparation work and you go, hey, I just wanted to apologize for how I blew up at you online. And you don't bring up anything they did, not even a little bit. That's the temptation, right? I want to apologize for how I did that, but you, That's how we instinctively do it. But now you're going to do it in a better way, which is don't bring up their part. That is for them to do. Just say, I'm sorry for how I blew up at you online. I realize that I may have assumed worse motives than you had, and I'm sorry. If that had happened to me, I would have been embarrassed, for people to see that online. I hope we can work it out. That's all you have to say. You may not even want to work it out, so you don't have to say that if you want. But the key thing there is to just admit really plainly and honestly, this is what I did. This is how I would feel if it were done to me. I'm sorry. I would like this to be resolved and worked out. Or just, I'm sorry. You can say, I hope you can forgive me. And you leave it at that. And I'm just going to tell you, in my experience, probably they are not going to apologize for what they did. So just be ready for that. You don't care. You don't need their apology, right? You just need to have peace inside because you know who you are. You know what you're doing. You know what they did is wrong, right? You don't know how bad it was, but your goal in life is to start getting a grip on this PTSD reaction where you flip out on people. And I don't say that as judgment at you. I say that as somebody who has done it before too. And it feels terrible. I mean, the shame is awful when you flipped out on somebody, right? I know. And so you're practicing giving that good apology and then just stepping back and letting the chips fall where they may. I don't think it's very likely to create an opening for them to come complaining at you. But if they do, all you do is go, okay, I hear you. Yep, I'll take that into consideration if they did that. But I'll tell you what, I've had to make some pretty scary apologies to people for things worse than what you did. And the worst thing that's ever happened is people just were indifferent. They were like, oh, whatever, okay. And it didn't change our relationship, and it doesn't need to. It did feel good to just say, I'm sorry I did that. Because I was ashamed. I was ashamed about how I acted. And I needed to just take responsibility for that and clean up my mess. Just take a little broom and go there. It's no longer lying around. It doesn't change what they did. But you're learning by this to have boundaries, and you feeling more confident that you can cope with and take responsibility for your part in things is going to empower you next time somebody mistreats you to stand up to them in an elegant way, in a pointed way, in a way that does defend yourself or ask questions or has a conversation or patches things up, as the case may be, that you feel is the appropriate outcome. But you're no longer a prisoner of your own PTSD reactions. That's what you're teaching yourself to do. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. I'd like to hear. You're not foolish for trying. You're actually highly evolved. We have a saying in my house, first one to apologize wins. That's the rule. That's how it works. The person who knows how to apologize quickly has great emotional maturity and fluidity and choices in life. So I hope that helps. This was a great story. Tell us what happened. We would really appreciate it. Chelsea, I appreciate the letter. A huge problem for those of us who grew up in families with abuse and neglect, definitely for me, maybe for you too, is that we end up with mean people all up and down our lives. Do you have that? They criticize you, they ridicule you, they ostracize you, they underestimate you, and they say terrible things about you that turn people against you. And I'm talking friends, relatives, coworkers, neighbors, bosses, definitely bosses, and of course, partners. It feels like mean people are everywhere and they come out of nowhere. It feels like you have no control over how you get treated. And while you might complain about their terrible treatment of you, do you find that you just keep letting them stay in your life? That's a trauma symptom. Why do we do that? I'm just going to talk about a few things that come to mind. It's what you know, right? If you grew up with people who mistreated you, you learn that it's normal for people to act like this. You learn that that feeling of like, when somebody says something really cruel to you, the way you feel kind of sucker punched or deflated or bad about yourself, it becomes so normal that you tolerate it. You just learn to put up with it. It seems like how everybody is. Or we call that in Crappy Childhood Fairy crap fitting. You learn to fit yourself to crap. And that crap meaning like unacceptable people, unacceptable situations. There's some sort of deep trauma-driven belief in there that that's what you have to do, that it's not negotiable, that if people treat you badly, instead of, they have to change or leave, or you leave, what your mind tells you is that you have to fit yourself to it. You're like, I can do it. I can take this. I'm tough. I have thick skin. Oh, that's a very unfortunate adaptation to trauma. Another reason is you're just no longer sensitive to mistreatment. You've had to armor yourself so much that you can't feel when people are mean to you. And have you ever noticed that? When you see somebody after a very long time, somebody who hurt you, sometimes when you had a little healing between now and then, you're just like, wow, why was I ever friends with this person? Or something that happens to me is sometimes in videos, I tell stories that are meant to make an illustrative point. And I'll say, yeah, I had this friend and she totally berated me after I made a film. And, people just said to me, that doesn't sound like a good friend. And there's been a few things like that where I've told a story, the stories about how people got so sick of me being endlessly needy. And it's a complicated story because, when I was hitting bottom with my trauma 30 years ago and I didn't know what was wrong with me, I had pushed almost everybody away. And I was begging for help and I would call people and ask for help and I would just talk and talk and talk. And it's a very, when you're in the middle of trauma, it's a very self-centered place, right? And so I would just forget who I was even talking to. I would never ask about them. I mean, I wasn't in a position to be mutually friendly or anything. I was desperate for help. And people got sick of it. And some people leveled with me. And one friend said, I'm just not putting up with this anymore. Another friend said, well, yeah, people aren't going to deal with this. She didn't leave me as a friend, but she was hard on me and realistic with me. But anyway, what's interesting is that in the comments, there were people who were like, I don't know, that just doesn't sound like a good friend. And it gave me pause. I think when you're a traumatized person, there's a lot of layers to the friendships that you've had. The people that you met a long time ago when you were still very traumatized, there's this stuff that happened and maybe it's never been apologized for. Maybe the silent treatment, maybe people didn't show up to help you when you needed help. Maybe people ganged up on you with others and then you run into them later and there just got to be a reason to keep them in your life. There's got to be a reason to keep mean people in your life. And just like trying to keep the peace isn't always a good enough reason. Or just believing that this is how all people are, it's not a very good reason. Now, I see that a lot in the comments. I've said this before. When I read the comments every day, usually first thing in the morning, and the really harsh comments come at night. And at night, there's a lot of people, maybe they've been drinking, or maybe they're just going through the dark night of the soul. But there's a lot of comments that are just like, people are terrible. They're worthless. You can't trust anybody. And on the one hand, it's a weird kind of putting yourself on a pedestal to believe that everybody else is a terrible person. But I also think it's a very trauma-driven experience. It's an experience that comes with the territory of being very traumatized, because you end up drawn to and hanging out these mean people who literally don't care about you. They don't care about you, and it comes to appear like it's the whole world, but it's not the whole world. Now, another reason I think that we tend to surround ourselves with more than our share of mean people is because we carry a lot of shame and guilt. And shame and guilt, I think, is a mix of actual earned shame for things that we don't feel good about, and then this like sticky shame where just free-floating shame of people putting you down sticks to you. And I find that it can't stick to you so well when you clear up your own things that you do feel bad about. Like when I was a teenager, I shoplifted, and I was very sensitive for a long time about people not trusting me. But I hadn't really taken into account, like I was a teenager, my dad was dying, I totally forgive myself for doing it, but I felt quite bad about myself. I felt guilty, I felt ashamed, and my best friend's mom wouldn't let her hang out with me anymore as a result of that. And I carried this shame into adulthood. I never stole anything again, but I carried this shame into adulthood about it. And it wasn't until I like totally faced that and kind of worked it through my daily practice and talked to my 12-step sponsor about it that I was like, okay, that's taken care of. And I tried to even pay the money back for the thing I stole, but the business wasn't there anymore. And so you know what I did? I donated the money of the cost of the thing that I stole, and I added like 4% interest per year. And I donated that. And it actually did give me peace. You know, it may not have, you might say, well, what good does that do? But it gives you peace. And to start to be able to hold your head up again is very important if you're going to stop letting in mean people in your life. Because thinking of myself as somebody not worthy to hang out with other people because I had done this thing, yeah, that's, I did other, you know, I've made all kinds of mistakes in my life, but I keep learning that until I clear them up, I tend to feel so bad about myself that I have a hard time seeing and being sensitive to. That's where you lose your sensitivity. You can't feel the difference between right and wrong. Now, when you're in a good, self-regulated, healed state, and I teach a lot about how to re-regulate here on this channel. I teach it in my book, Re-Regulated, which I hope you have by now. There's a link down in the description section. When your nervous system is re-regulated, when you've cleared up mistakes you've made, apologized, made restitution if you need to, when you've put up your boundaries and expressed yourself to the people who have hurt you, it starts to really shake things out. Like people who have hurt you cannot stay in your life if you're honest with them, that you remember what they did, right? So sometimes that might not be your choice, is to confront or tell the truth, and that is okay. But it's something to put in your mind. And believe me, if it was something egregious that somebody did, it can really help to have a mentor or a therapist or somebody who walks you through something like that. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not always wise to go confront somebody who hurt you. The first time I did it, the first time I went and confronted my parents about the abuse that happened from a relative, they kicked me out of the house. And I found that out they did that to other family members too. There literally was no help for those of us who told and said that we had been abused. And so confronting ended up being this disaster. It was very upsetting, and it made me more unhappy. So it's a difficult thing. It's not a straight shot, but we have to find that equilibrium in ourselves to know that when I was abused as a kid, for example, I did nothing wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. And what I can change is how carrying that burden went forward with me. And there's definitely a pattern for so many traumatized people. You know, you may have it, I've had it. I'm getting so much better about it. I never feel like I'm totally free and out of the woods, though. I have to be vigilant about it. But I have this huge tolerance for mean people in my life, people who gossip and who are unfair and critical about stuff. And I'm getting better and better as a result of my healing at deciding when I want to speak up, when I don't want to speak up, when I want to get away from that person, and when I want to overlook the whole thing and just kind of love that person anyway. It's a choice. They're all choices. But they're choices that we can only make in a good way when we're awake, when we're regulated, when we're not living that trauma-driven bad dream of just like, I'm such a bad person, I have to put up with this. Or I have to be so spiritual. I'm so spiritual, I can just tolerate all this abuse. And I'm like on some higher plane. That's like called spiritual bypass, right? Now, I think also a really big reason why we will tolerate a lot of mean people in our lives, it almost feels like we attract them, right? But you know, I always challenge everybody. It's like, do you attract them, or are you attracted to them? Or are you too tolerant of them? Like, those are three different things. It's good to be aware. If you're carrying an abandonment wound, if you have this deep fear of abandonment, if you carry a deep belief that you better put up with these mean friends because you won't ever have other friends, or you better stay with this jerk because no one else will ever love you, that is an abandonment wound. And it's a poisonous one because it's simply not true. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if you stay married to an abusive person, yeah, you're not going to be married to somebody else. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. But you cannot have a better relationship with someone who cannot change and who continues to abuse you. And so there's this weird kind of dance that we get into with our own mind, this inner conflict of like, half the time we're thinking, I'm so miserable, I'm so pissed off about how I get treated in this relationship. And then, oh no, I'm scared they don't like me, I'm scared they're going to leave me. They're actually so good, this is the best I ever had. And it's like flip, flop, flip, flop. Have you done that? I've done it. It feels terrible. It's so demoralizing, right? And so what we need sometimes to break the spell that makes us think we have to do that, which is, totally forgivable, because that's what happens to traumatized kids. They get this kind of distorted thinking in that department. And what we need tools that help us get real, that help us process our feelings and say, wait a second, let me just write down the facts of what have happened here and how I feel about it. And we need human beings who will stay by our side and help us. And some people get that at a therapist. Some people get it in a 12-step fellowship. Some people get it, you could get it in our membership where we're totally focused on healing from childhood trauma. Some people get it from a best friend, or, maybe you have a circle of friends who happen to really get you on this, and you guys stick together and support each other in stepping up out of the old trauma-driven thinking and the trauma-driven patterns. Patterns are hard to get out of, and we need a hand sometimes. It's very hard to do by yourself. And unfortunately, having lived through trauma, we often end up with this tendency to want to isolate. We just feel like I can't tell anybody what's going on, or, I don't want to show myself, or I've been in some sort of self-destructive behaviors and I'm ashamed of myself. And so we hide and we don't get the very things we need. So I have a word for this. When things are really bad and you don't know what to do and you have to do something and there's 20 things you could do, but where do you start? I call it, you break the wheel. You take this imaginary stick and you jam it. There's the spinning wheel of all the trouble, and you jam your stick in there and you break the wheel. You don't know where it's going to land. And what I'm trying to say is, you pick one thing that you can do. You pick one thing that you can do. You make a phone call to a hotline, or you walk to that meeting, or you pack a go bag and you get out of that house and you turn the page on the stuckness that you are in. Sometimes, if you feel like you can't take any action at all, you just feel totally frozen. If you can only do one thing, just go outside and move your body. Sometimes that can sort of wake you up a little bit, give you a little fresh air, move your nervous system around a little bit, enough to take a second action. There's nothing so precious as a first action, except a second action, because the second action leads to a third action and then a fourth action. And that's how we get out of it. You're not meant to be surrounded by mean people in your life. And that's why I asked you the question, why do you have so many mean people still in your life? I think when it's happening to us, it feels like there's no rhyme or reason, or people will say, I'm cursed, or the universe is out to get me. And I know that feeling. It does feel like that. But it can't really do that without some kind of cooperation from us. Well, I won't say never, because people certainly could be incarcerated, they could be kidnapped. There are conditions where you literally have no control over your environment. But most of the time we do have some control. And so life is always a mix of like things I can't do anything about and a couple things I can, and we bring our focus. Okay, what can I do? So I encourage you to do it. It's so important. Your life is so important. Your happiness deserves to flourish. So please consider taking action right now on your own behalf to break that wheel, to take one action. If you need professional help, call for that. That's, when things get very tough, there's just no substitute for people who are connected to agencies and systems who can get you out of danger, who can help you hang on. And then the people in your life who you may not even know yet, people who are very, very good at being a friend to people like you. Wouldn't it be good to be in a circle of friends of people who get it and who are working on themselves, and not to have to fear being alone if you were to even change one of your mean relationships with people, even to just let one of those people go and to take them out of your life. It's so important to take action because abuse of any kind, it grinds you down until you don't feel like you could ever have a positive change. You can't even picture yourself having a good friend. Your thinking gets negative about yourself, about other people. And when you think that way, it repels good people. It pushes them away. They can sense it about you even when you're saying all the nice words. And this confirms your worst fears that this is the best you can do. And that's how you get trapped. The pain will show in your appearance. The pain will show in the home you live in. The pain will show in the job you choose. It will show in your choice of partners. A better life is meant for you, but it's blocked from reaching you. So that is how you change. Break that wheel. And I'm guessing that if you tolerate mistreatment from other people, you probably don't treat yourself very well either. And I'm talking self-care. So maybe you can't change other people today, but you can honor yourself. You can treat yourself with respect today, with the way you eat, with the way you dress. You can have one good day where you have 3 nice meals and you dress wearing something that you feel good in, and you spend your money wisely, but not too much. And you focus on your goals and you sit down quietly and write down a few things that you would like to get done in the near future. You do what you can to connect with something good, to disconnect from the bad and connect with the good. There's nothing more to life than a bunch of small steps. So sometimes we won't take that kind of action unless things get really hard. And it's okay to let that be how it happens. That's how I changed. I pushed everybody away, and then I started going to that 12-step program. Then I started working on myself. I started exercising. I went to grad school. I started working on my skills, and then one foot in front of the other. If you need a tool that's free and easy, that helps you to process the hard feelings that have you feeling overwhelmed all the time, try what I did. I call it the daily practice. It's a really simple writing technique to get those fearful and resentful thoughts out on paper and release them, and then rest your mind in meditation. You might be surprised how powerful it is.